They don't want that free blues. Yo, what up? This is Free Blues Boxing. Hit the like, subscribe, and the notification bell for unlimited content. We bike. Here we go, Boxing World. Saturday, December 5th. Errol, the Truth Spence Jr. will be defending his welterweight championship belts, the IBF and the WBC, against Danny Swift Garcia. ESPN invited Errol Spence into their platform to talk about his upcoming fight with Danny. I've been watching Errol Spence for about 4 or 5 years now. I gotta say, this is the most focused I've ever seen him. I mean, the fact that he's fighting one of the best fighters at the welterweight division. He didn't fight a bum or a plumber or a school teacher or a taxi driver. Nope, he's fighting a top 3 or 4 guy at the welterweight division. Everyone knows Danny Swift Garcia is a veteran. He was the man at light welterweight division, aka 140. So it should really be an interesting fight. You don't really see fighters come back and fight the top guys after even breaking a bone. Errol Spence was ejected out of the windshield of his Ferrari, and he's taking on a lead opponent. And this was just last year after he fought Sean Porter. 2 months after the fight, November 2019, he got in a horrific car accident. If you've seen the car accident, I mean, the Ferrari flipped over at least 10 times. The whole boxing world, and fans were shocked. We didn't think Errol Spence would be back when we seen the pictures. And the information came out. He only had face lacerations. And yeah, it's just kind of crazy. He's 100% now, so it's pretty unbelievable. So yeah, so he said, the MRI reaction test came back good. The clinics, gave him the A-OK. And one thing that stood out to me is that he said he started sparring in September. So 10 months after that crazy accident, he started, getting back on the bags. He started sparring. Just like 3 months after that, in February, he got back in the gym. Really just started running and working on conditioning. So actually, he's been training for this fight for a while. And he also said this is the easiest he's ever made weight. It kind of reminded me of Devin Haney. Devin Haney had messed up his shoulder and, took a break from boxing. And then the training preparation for the fight just came easy. I've seen him train. Errol looks like he's in tremendous shape. The only thing I will say is that I just think he's going to be a little bit rusty. But when he catches his second win, I think it will be too much for Danny towards the second half of the fight. On the First Take show, Max Kellerman had pointed out that, Errol, we've seen you, be the boxer puncher and beat up Mikey Garcia in a chess match, but we also seen you, brawl it out with Sean Porter. What type of Errol Spence are we gonna get? Are we gonna get the previous Errol Spence Jr. High knockout ratio coming to punish you? Errol pointed out, those two fights were really just statements. He really fought those, those type of styles just to beat them at their own game. Errol Spence was right. Everybody thought that Mikey Garcia coming up from 135, the lightweight division, was going to come up to welterweight division and fight the top dog, Errol Spence Jr., and outsmart him. I thought that was crazy. But then the other half was like, oh, no, Mikey Garcia was crazy to even move up in weight and fight such a fierce opponent. Errol was criticized for not knocking him out. But if you watch the fight, he dominated in every round. A real boxing fan would appreciate that performance. I mean, Errol literally said, I'm coming in this fight not trying to knock him out. I'm going to beat him using my boxing IQ. And Errol Spence has been the boogeyman at the welterweight division. He's been the most avoided guy by all of these top guys. Keith Thurman, Danny Swift Garcia, Manny Pacquiao. All these fighters have been overlooking Spence for the longest. It's crazy to see that, the scenario has been reversed, and, even Keith Thurman, who lost his WBA belt to Manny Pacquiao, they have to look towards, because Manny Pacquiao is kind of on the end now. He's not really fighting He's not really in his prime. He's not as active as he was. Everybody's looking at Danny Danny Garcia is looking at Errol Spence, like the top guy. I mean, Errol is the unified champion at the welterweight division. Funny, on the First Take show, Errol Spence was like, you guys don't mention Keith Thurman. That fight will not happen. And he was cracking up as well. Even before the Kell Brook fight, Errol's been calling out these guys for years and years. So he's kind of turning their back on them now. Like, nah, F y'all. We're, we on the bigger and better things. So, it's just exciting to see. Errol said, he could have stayed on the outside and just outboxed Sean. Keep in mind, Errol Spence is, tall at the welterweight division, standing at 5'9", with a 72-inch reach. That makes Errol disadvantaged. Not only is he the most powerful, in my opinion, the highest boxing IQ, and the best jab. Let me not forget, he has the best jab at the welterweight division over Terrence Crawford, Keith Thurman, Manny Pacquiao, Danny Garcia. That just sets Errol apart from the pack. Between Errol Spence Jr. and Danny Garcia, it's going to be a chess match. It's going to come down to the jab game. If Errol is really, putting the stick on, really, really popping out his jab at Danny, he could easily set up the combinations and dig into the body early. And it can be a stoppage. Not to discredit Danny Garcia, who's a really tough opponent, probably one of the best punchers in the game, very underrated power-wise. Danny Garcia is going to bring the best out of Errol Spence Jr. since Sean Porter, and I just can't wait to see. But reach is definitely going to be a factor. Reach and height. Errol standing at a couple inches taller. The 72-inch reach is definitely going to make the difference when it comes to the jab compared to Danny Garcia's 68.5-inch reach. But Errol Spence Jr. definitely made it clear that in this fight against Danny Garcia, he's going to show the whole arsenal. In other words, he's going to show the whole package. He's going to show that he is a better all-around fighter than Danny Garcia. Errol was even bold enough to say on the show that even if he was just 70% of himself, even if he was just 70% of himself, Danny Garcia still couldn't beat him. That's really bold to say, coming off of the car accident. That definitely just, as a fight fan, definitely make you want to tune in and see if Errol Spence can back that up. So, Terrence Crawford just came off a huge win against Kell Brook, defending his WBO belt. First Take being, it's a ESPN platform. They definitely have to hype up, the future super fight between Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr. Stephen A. basically asked Errol Spence, what is his thoughts, on the future fight, and he was just like, I'm not worried about it. Right, after he gets through Danny Garcia, then you can ask all the Terrence Crawford related questions. So Errol made a good point. He said that if he was running, because he gets criticized from running from Terrence Crawford, I think people that don't know much about boxing say things like that make no sense. He said if he was running from Terrence Crawford, he would have fought a tune-up, and that makes perfect sense. But at the end of the day, critics can't really say much. Errol's still fighting a top guy, handling business on the PBC Al Heyman side, fighting top 3 or 4 guys, compared to Terrence Crawford, who is, I agree, who is the pound-for-pound #1 boxer. Just his resume is a little sketchy. He hasn't really fought someone of his caliber. That's what differentiates him and Errol Spence. Terrence Crawford is the pound-for-pound king. He's not overrated in no shape or form. But I got to say, Terrence Crawford may not reach, that full, superstardom, that full potential if he doesn't get it there with the Errol Spence. Hopefully he gets out of his contract and goes to the other side and really make these mega fights happen with Danny Garcia, Errol Spence Jr., Manny Pacquiao. So we'll just have to see. It's a matter of time. First take, Max Kellerman actually flipped the question, that Stephen A. asked, just to put it in different words, to get more out of Errol Spence Jr. in the interview. The most Errol said was, yeah, I am interested in fighting Terrence Crawford. He does have the world title, and he does want to be undisputed. So that pretty much answered the question for now about Terrence Crawford. And fans are just going to have to be patient. Errol Spence does want to clean out the welterweight division and secure those other two belts of the WBA that Manny Pacquiao has and the WBO that Terrence Crawford has across the street on the ESPN platform. But again, Errol said his number one focus is Danny Garcia. Bottom line. Stephen A. asked Errol Spence, is there still more to prove, at this stage of his career? It was a pretty obvious question. Errol Spence was like, yeah, I'm facing a great fighter. Danny Garcia it was the unified champion at one point. And Errol was really bold. He was really bold in this interview. He said he wants a one-sided beating in my hometown. Like I said earlier, this is a much-anticipated fight. If he goes out this Saturday, December 5th, and dominates Danny Garcia. In fact, if he stops TKO or knocks out Danny Garcia, he is putting the welterweight division on notice, and he's securing his spot as the boogeyman, and he's already the unified champion. It's not going to be much the critics in the boxing world can say if he were to knock out Danny Garcia. So yeah, Errol has extreme confidence on the show. He said he's going to show people that he's still beating guys up and he's still able to make guys quit mentally and physically. And he said as far as Danny Garcia, he's going to give him the worst beating of his career. So he's got everyone on pins and needles. And we're just going to have to see if Errol can step up to the plate. Let's not forget that Danny Garcia has been in a lot of close fights. He does have 2 losses against Keith Thurman and Sean Porter. Errol Spence beat Sean Porter and got the knockdown. Danny Garcia had another controversial win against Adrian Peterson, which I think was a draw. They gave that to Danny Garcia in a split decision. Errol Spence fought Adrian Peterson and knocked him out. So, but then again, styles make fights, and we're just going to have to see. So, yeah, you can't miss it. Saturday, December 5th, Errol the Truth Spence Jr., 26-0, 21 knockouts, will be defending his WBC and IBF world title. Belts are on the line. He'll be facing Danny Swift Garcia at 36-2, former 2-time division champion. They don't want that free blues. Yo, this is Free Blues Boxing. Please hit the subscribe, like, and the notification bell for unlimited boxing content. You know what it is. Until next time, peace and love.